Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yay. Okay, I probably don't even need this mic. Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the Cumberland Memorial Service. My name is Stacy Taylor, and I am so pleased to serve as your hostess for this momentous occasion. When I was talking to my niece, Jamie, she said that she was coordinating a memorial for veterans and for fallen soldiers. I begged her to be a part of this ceremony. And she said, only if I stuck to the script, because I tend to freestyle a little bit. And they call me Squirrel. So if I start getting off track, you guys say, Squirrel. Okay, and I'll get back to the program. But I actually served 14 years in the United States Air Force, active duty, and thank you. Thank you so much. And after which, I joined the civilian federal service and worked for the government for 20-some plus years, and most of it with the VA Medical Center. So serving veterans and serving this country is just wrapped into my DNA. It's just me. But we're not going to talk so much about me, but we are going to talk a little bit about this beautiful monument and all these names that are here. These are World War II veterans that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And this is just wonderful that Cleveland Heights is taking the time out, and all of you are taking the time out to join and just showing respect and commending all of what they've done for us. So this seems like the absolute perfect time for all of us who can stand, if you can stand, to please rise to your feet so that we can have Jamie present us with the national anthem.
Good morning. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Man, that's all right. Woo. Wow. Woo. Okay, now. I know nobody really wants to follow that because that was beautiful. I'm gonna need a tissue. I gave my nephew my scarf. I needed to kind of dab at my cheeks a little bit because that was, woo, that was just heartfelt. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Squirrel. Okay, got it. Okay. Well, I'm going to be taking a seat here because we have some wonderful members of our city leadership here with us today, and they're going to be speaking. So please welcome to the podium Council President Tony Kudo, Council Vice President Gail Larson, and Council Member Jessica Cohen. Thank you.
Jamie, oh my God. You know, sometimes we don't know the talents of everybody we work with, but that was fantastic. I graduated from Cleveland Heights High School in 1973, and that was the last year of the draft. But some of the names you'll see up on this wall are people I went to school with, and I just want to honor them today with all of you. Council Vice President?
Morning, everybody. I'm glad that you all came out, even though it's kind of foggy. I'd like to thank Mayor Petrus for giving me this opportunity to speak this morning. It's an honor. To the veterans in the audience, your service to this country is greatly appreciated. And I would like to promise that it will never be minimized or forgotten. Every Memorial Day in my family, we honored my father, Earl Anton Draxton, born in 1922, passed away in 2011. When he went to enlist in the Navy during World War II, he was too young, so my grandfather had to sign the paperwork. Dad served 6 years in the Atlantic Theater. He was at Normandy, working below deck on a ship, creating smoke to cover the troops as they disembarked from their troop transports. During his time in the Atlantic, he served on several ships, 3 of which were sunk by the Germans. As kids, we did not know very much about his service. He didn't talk about it. As adults, we finally started to hear about Normandy and some of the other experiences that he had during the war. If you were to ask my father today, why did you willingly sacrifice 6 years of your young life to serve in the Navy? From what I know of his values, he would probably say, I wanted to protect my family. I wanted to represent my native state of Minnesota. I wanted to defend the democracy that has given us all the freedoms that we all cherish today. And I wanted to fight for the rights of all those innocents who were harmed during the war. Today, we honor all our vets here, all named on this wall, and my dad, Earl Anton Draxton. Rest in peace, Daddy.
Good morning. Today we gather not to simply mark a date on the calendar, but to honor courage, sacrifice, and service at the very heart of what makes this country endure. Memorial Day reminds us that freedom is never automatic. Democracy is never guaranteed. The ideals we cherish, liberty, justice, equality, opportunity, and the right to live openly and safely as ourselves, have always depended on ordinary Americans willing to do extraordinary things in service of something greater than themselves. And at this moment in our nation's history, that reminder feels more important than ever. We're living in a time when so many of the institutions, values, and democratic norms that generations of Americans fought to protect feel fragile. It's easy to become cynical, easy to become divided, easy to forget that the promise of this country has always required participation, responsibility, and faith in one another. But the men and women we honor today, here on this wall and here with us this morning, did not risk everything for what is the worst of our nation. They did so because they believed this country and the democratic ideals at its foundation were worth defending, even at the cost of their very lives. For me, this day is also deeply personal. My maternal grandfather came to this country as an immigrant and joined the United States Army as a condition of entering the country. But his service did not end there. He served an additional 6 years in the National Guard. He believed so deeply in the promise of this country that he was willing to defend it before he had even fully become part of it. My paternal grandfather also served in the United States Army during World War II, part of a generation with Council Vice President Larson's father that answered the call at one of the darkest moments in human history. and my father-in-law served in Vietnam and sacrificed so many years of his life because of the trauma and impact that active combat had. Their stories remind me that patriotism is not about slogans. It is about sacrifice. It is about duty. It is about believing that this nation, imperfect though it may be, is worth protecting, worth strengthening, and worth passing on to the next generation stronger than we found it. And today, we especially remember those who never came home. The service members who gave not just years of their lives, but their lives themselves. We owe them more than gratitude. We owe them our commitment to live in a way that honors their sacrifice, by protecting our democracy, serving our communities, and continuing the unfinished work of building a country that lives up to its highest ideals. May we never take their courage for granted, and may their memory always be a blessing and a call to service to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Kudo, Vice President Larson, and Council Member Jessica Cohen. Those were very touching stories, very heartfelt. Thank you so much for sharing those. Next, we're going to bring to the podium a young man who's going to be speaking about some of the names that we see here. You know, after the program, take the time and take a look. You might see some names of people that were associated with your family or members of your family. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Jaden Martin to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. We're gathered here today at the Veterans Memorial in Cumberland Park, a place that has been a part of Cleveland Heights for generations. This memorial was first dedicated in 1943, right in the middle of World War II, to honor the sons and daughters of this community who were serving at that very moment. Over time, it has grown to include those who served in Korea, Vietnam, and other conflicts. So when we stand here today, we're not just looking at one moment in history. We're looking at generations of people from this country who gave their all when it mattered most. Behind me are names like Sidney Rappaport, Alice Sager, Walter Page, and Guy Luster. We may not know their full stories yet, but they were a part of Cleveland Heights. They lived here, went to school here, had families here, and at some point, they were called to serve. Even when we don't know every detail, we still remember them, because their names remind us they were here and they mattered. And then there are names whose stories we've been able to learn more about. John S. Archer Jr., connected to Cleveland Heights, became a pilot during World War II. In 1944, his plane was shot down over the Netherlands. He was just 22 years old. Walter A. Wagner served as an Army officer and was killed in France during the Normandy campaign. Jack Ralph Mason went missing during a mission over France, reminding us that some families never got answers. Orville J. Patterson was just 21 when he was killed in Italy. And Alan L. Peake also gave his life in France, another life lost far too soon. What stands out isn't just where they served, it's how young they were. They weren't much older than I am right now, and the sacrifice didn't end with World War II. During the Korean War, names from this country appear again. Hubert King, Harry Wilcox, Theodore Bonchek. And then there are two names that are especially hard to hear together. Donald Dowling and Paul Dowling Jr. They were brothers. They served side by side as Marines. They were captured on the same day during the fighting in Korea. And they died in captivity on the very same day. Their stories remind us that war doesn't just take individuals, it takes families. And while many were lost, others came home. People like Kenneth Malton, Benedict Ferroni, and Jane Poffenberger returned from the war and helped build this community into what it is today. That's what makes this place so meaningful. Cumberland Park isn't just a park. It's connected to battlefields across the world and to lives that started right here in Cleveland Heights. And for me, standing here as a graduating senior, getting ready to go off to college, it's a reminder that the opportunity I have, the ability to learn, to grow, to plan my future, exists because of the sacrifices made by those names who are here today, or who are here. Their courage made space for all of us to live our lives the way we do today. So today isn't just about remembering the past, it's about saying thank you. Thank you for their service, thank you for their sacrifice, thank you for their loved ones, and thank you for the lives we're able to live because of theirs. And it's about continuing this tradition so that every year we come back, we say their names, and we remember. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about taking so long to get up the stairs. I am in my, early 60s. Okay. Thank you, Jaden, for those very meaningful words. Those were very touching. Wow. You never know who your neighbor is. You really don't. And so that's beautiful that we, got a little bit of history from young Jaden there. Okay, next, we're going to have a musical selection from the Cleveland Heights University High School Band.
Good morning, everybody. We want to thank Mayor Petrus and the council and the city of Cleveland Heights for having us here to perform for you this year and today. For our performance, we're going to play all of the military marches from all of the branches of the military. So if you would like to stand and honor both the fallen and the living veterans from each service, the order of service marches is the United States Army, the United States Navy, the United States Marines, the United States Air Force, the United States Space Force, and the United States Coast Guard. Once again, the order of marches will be the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, Space Force, and Coast Guard. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Thank you, Cleveland Heights Band, for those beautiful selections. Very patriotic. Wow. You guys are extremely talented. Thank you. Well, at this time, my segment is concluded, and hopefully I've earned the chance to come back next year by sticking to the script. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Jamie and council members. Now I would like to bring to the podium Mayor Jim Petrus, who will lead us through the remainder of the ceremony. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to everyone else for joining us today. I'd like to give a special thank you to our All Generations Band, our Heights High Band that we just heard from, as well as Troop 22, our officers, and everyone who is involved with the planning. Events like this just don't happen, and so I'd like to give a special thank you to Jamie Taylor, our events coordinator, Steve Barker, Jessica Shantz, Josie Moore, Miles. Where's Miles? I think I saw Miles as well, and everyone else who was involved with this event. And I'd now like to invite Troop 22 to lower the flag. Thank you, Troop 22. I'd like to now invite any veterans to the stage who would like to share a few words with us.
Jim, I hope for more. Good morning, and thank you all so much for being here. For those of us who served, it's important to know that the rest of you value what we did. I'm only going to take a few moments here. I wish there were more of us when I first started coming up here for these kind of discussions 15 years ago. I was in a line that went down to almost to the flagpole. We have the veterans now, and for some reason, they don't come. But I want to say something to the young people who, particularly those of you who are in the band, because you're at an interesting age. You're at the age where you are going to face the question of whether or not you will choose to serve. I will make a couple of quick points. One is that a guy named George Santayana, who was a philosopher in the early 20th century, said something that was a play on what Plato had said long ago in the Republic. And he said, "Only the dead will never see war." Unfortunately, if you look back on our history, that's true. In the 20th century alone, we have lost almost 2 million Americans dead or injured. 600,000 of those were absolutely gone. And you too are going to have to ask yourself the question, is what we want to do and what we propose to do as a nation worth giving everything for? Some of us long ago made the decision that the answer to that was yes. And I have never regretted a moment of it. I would thank you for honoring us today. And one last thing I will please say, it's going to sound funky, but please don't say Happy Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a day for thinking about those who are gone. I think about the names on the wall in Washington, D.C. that are the men that I served with long ago in Vietnam. And it is not a day of smiles, although there are occasional smiles as you remember them, and you remember that they too lived life to the fullest and gave everything. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening, and particularly for coming out on a pretty grubby day. And Jim, thank you so much for making this happen and for giving me the chance to say a few words. Take care.
Thank you, Larry, for your service and for those words. Friends and neighbors, we gather here today, as Larry just reminded us, not for a celebration, but for a moment of reflection, a moment when we stop and ask ourselves whether we're living in a way that honors those who gave everything so that we might live freely. We all know that Memorial Day is not about barbecues. It's not about the start of summer. It's about a debt so deep that no parade or moment of silence can ever fully repay it. But we try. The story of American sacrifice is as old as the nation itself. Generation after generation, young men and women have looked at the world around them, seen something worth fighting for, and stepped forward when stepping back would have been so much easier. It lives on in every soldier deployed to a distant front. It lives on in every veteran who carries invisible wounds long after coming home. And it lived on in a young man who grew up right here in Cleveland Heights. Cooper Andrews attended Heights High. He served in the United States Marine Corps from 2017 to 2022. When his service ended, he came home. And when he watched Russia invade Ukraine, watched cities reduced to ash, watched families torn apart, and he could not stay home. He told his pastor, Mr. John Lentz, who was the pastor at Forest Hill Presbyterian just over here, that he felt a calling to defend the Ukrainian people, and he went. On April 19th, Cooper was killed by mortar fire while trying to help evacuate wounded soldiers and civilians trapped behind Russian lines. He was 26 years old. Cooper's story fits into something much larger than one man's decision. He is just one of a long line of Americans who in every era, in every conflict, have asked themselves a simple and devastating question, if not me, who? And found they could only answer in one way. So today, we stand here, and I ask you to carry something home with you, not just a memory of this ceremony, but a commitment. Commitment to be worthy of what was given, to vote like it matters because people died for your right to do it, to speak up for what is right because people died for your right to do that too, to look out for one another in this community because that's what Cooper Andrews crossed an ocean to do for strangers he had never met. The names on these monuments, the folded flags on our mantelpieces, the empty chairs at family tables across the country, they're not just symbols, they help us to remember people. They were someone's child, someone's friend, someone's neighbor, and Cooper Andrews was just one of those. Remember him today, as well as all veterans and folks who lost their lives in the line of duty. And then, when this ceremony is over and the flags are folded, the crowd goes home, carry that memory forward into the way you live, the choices you make, the kind of country you help build. That's how we honor the fallen, not just with words, but with lives worth the price they paid. Thank you for joining us today.